In this video, we're simplifying expressions that involve fractions and addition or subtraction. So let's start with this first one here. It says simplify, and we have 6/25 minus 2/15. So what we want to do when trying to add or subtract fractions is recognize that we have to have common denominators in order to be able to add them or subtract them. Now, if they don't have the same denominator, we have to get the same denominator. Once that's accomplished, we can then just add or subtract the numerators as planned. But the first step is to rewrite the fractions so they have the same common denominator. So what I'm going to think about then is, what is the least common multiple between these two denominators? In other words, what you probably want to do is to start with the larger of the two and count by that one until you find something that the other one will go into evenly. So for example, if I do 25, well 15 doesn't go into 25, so that's not a common multiple. If I did 25 plus 25, or 2 times 25, I have 50, right? And so 50, does 15 go into 50? It actually does not, right? 15 will go into 45, but it won't go into 50. So then I'll go up one more 25, so I go from 50 to 75, and then in that case I might say, well geez, 75 obviously is something that 25 will go into evenly since we counted by 25 to get there, but does 15 go into 75? And you'll see that it actually does, right? So if you end up multiplying your 15 times 5, you will end up with an answer of 75. So it looks like 15 will go into 75. So we can rewrite both of these fractions with a common denominator of 75, and that will end up getting our problem done for us. So what do I need to do to 25 to turn it into 75? In other words, what do I need to multiply 25 by to turn it into 75? Well, the answer for that is 3, of course, right? 3 times 25 will give me 75. Whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I must also do to the top of the fraction, so I'll need to say 3 times 6 to get 18 for the numerator. Now, likewise, I need to ask, what do I have to do to make 15 become 75? Well, of course, 15 times 5 gives you 75. Now, 15 times 5 gives you 75. That means that 2 times 5 is going to end up giving me 10 for the numerator. Now, from here, both fractions have the same denominator. What's nice about that is then we can simply keep the common denominator for our answer and then subtract the two numbers on top. So 18 minus 10, or in other words, 8 is the final answer for that. Now I should reduce if I can, but 8, it turns out, does not have any divisors in common with 75. In other words, the only things that go into 8 really are 2 and 4 and 8, and 75 is not divisible by any of those things because 75 has no 2's in it. It's not an even number, has no 2's, so therefore 8 and 75 do not reduce. Alright, so looking at this next problem, we have, looks like 3, that's times 4/7 plus 1/2. So order of operations would say we must multiply before we can go ahead and try to add. So the best thing to do here is to write 3 as 3 over 1 times 4/7 plus 1/2. And then multiplication is very easy with fractions. We just go straight across. So 3 times 4 is 12. And 1 times 7 is simply 7. And then we have plus 1/2. Now again, if we want to add fractions or subtract fractions, we're required to have a common denominator. These denominators are not the same, so we need to turn them into the same. And the way to do that is to simply think about a multiple of the larger one that the smaller one will go into evenly. So let's think of 7. Does 2 go into 7? No. What if I double 7 and call it 14? Does 2 go into 14? It does, right? So that means that 14 will be our least common denominator, or our least common multiple, which we can then use as our common denominator. So how do we get from 7 to 14? Well, that means we multiplied by 2 to get from 7 to 14. So we have to do the same to the numerator. So it'll be 2 times 12, which produces 24 as the new numerator for this fraction. And then how did I go from 2 to 14? Well, I multiplied by 7. So that means I need to multiply the top by 7 as well. So 1 times 7 will produce 7. And then don't forget, we're adding, right? So ultimately, this expression on the left is the same as the one on the right. But now we have common denominators. So I can go ahead and keep that denominator common, right? And add together the numerators. So 24 plus 7 is going to end up giving me 31. And so we have the fraction 31 over 14, and that is our result. Now, we should check to see if it's reducible, but it turns out that 31 is prime. We won't find anything that goes into 31, so certainly nothing in 14 will go into 31. For example, 7 does not go into 31 even. 2 does not go into 31 evenly. And those are the only numbers that divide 14, so this is reduced as well. So our two answers then are 8 over 75 and 31 over 14.